There is a particular kind of blindness that feels exactly like love. It arrives wearing the language of faith, of patience, of the generous belief in what a person could become if given enough time, enough understanding, enough of the specific care that you are somehow uniquely positioned to provide. It presents itself as a virtue, as evidence of your capacity for depth, for seeing past the surface to what is genuinely there beneath the behavior that has been, perhaps, a little inconsistent, a little hurtful, a little difficult to reconcile with the version of the person you are holding in your mind as the real one. Most people who have ever stayed too long in something that was not serving them have stayed there in the name of potential, in the name of what they could see that the other person had not yet fully realized, in the name of the investment already made in a version of a relationship or a person that existed in its fullest form, primarily in the imagination rather than in the daily lived reality of what was actually occurring. In the name of the belief, sincere and genuinely felt, and ultimately more costly than almost any other belief, the heart can organize itself around, that who someone could be matters more than who they are consistently showing themselves to be. Carl Jung did not write directly about the concept of potential in the way it tends to appear in contemporary conversations about relationships, but he wrote extensively and with great precision about the mechanism at the heart of the problem, about projection, about the specific psychological operation through which a person places onto another human being qualities, possibilities, and interior depths that belong partly or largely to their own psyche rather than to the person they are seeing, and about the cost of this projection when it becomes the organizing principle of a significant relationship. When the person you are committed to is not quite the person standing in front of you, but the person your own interior has assembled from the materials of what you need to find, what you were trained to look for, and what your deepest longings have spent years constructing as the image of what love is supposed to look like. The potential you see in another person is never entirely fabricated. This is part of what makes it so difficult to distinguish from genuine perception. There is almost always something real in the person that the potential narrative is built around, a quality of intelligence that occasionally surfaces, a capacity for warmth that appears in certain conditions, a depth of feeling that becomes briefly visible in moments of genuine vulnerability or pressure, a glimpse, real enough to be genuinely felt, of who the person might be if they were operating from their best rather than from their habit. These glimpses are real, but the relationship constructed primarily from these glimpses, rather than from the pattern of what appears consistently across time and circumstance, is not built on the person. It is built on the person's highest moments, extended by the observer's longing into a continuous reality that the actual pattern of behavior does not support. And the longing is doing significant psychological work here, work that needs to be understood before the pattern that the longing enables can be honestly examined. The person who consistently invests in potential, who finds themselves drawn repeatedly to people whose promise exceeds their behavior, whose capacity seems greater than their consistency, whose future version feels more real than their present one, this person is not simply a romantic optimist with a generous spirit. They are, in most cases, organized around a specific interior wound that makes this particular form of investment feel not like a vulnerability, but like a calling, like the expression of something deep and fine in their character, like evidence of a capacity for love that smaller, less patient people lack. The wound, when it is examined honestly, almost always has a particular shape. It is the shape of having been in a situation, usually early in life, and usually with someone who mattered enormously, in which the person had no choice but to invest in potential, in which the relationship required, for its continuation and for the preservation of whatever warmth it contained, that the child or the dependent person reach past the actual behavior, past the inconsistency, or the absence, or the occasional cruelty, or the more pervasive emotional unavailability, and hold on to the version of the person who was sometimes present, the version who appeared in the good moments, the version who, the child concluded, was the real one, the version whose appearance was worth all the waiting and all the adjustment and all the careful management of the self that was required to make the conditions right for the better version to surface. This is how the wound was formed. Not through a single dramatic event, in most cases, but through the slow accumulation of experiences in which love was associated with the experience of reaching past what was present to maintain faith in what was possible, in which loyalty was demonstrated through the willingness to see past the pattern to the potential, in which love itself came to feel synonymous with the act of believing in someone despite the evidence, because the evidence had always been mixed and the relationship had always required the reach. And this learned association between love and the act of reaching past behavior to maintain faith in potential does not stay in the original relationship. It becomes the template through which significant relationships are subsequently selected and sustained. The person who learned love as the act of faithful, waiting for the better version to consistently appear, will find themselves, in adult life, inexplicably drawn to people who require exactly this form of waiting, will find the available, consistent, behaviorally reliable person strangely less compelling than the person whose depth is suggested but not delivered, whose warmth appears and disappears, whose potential is visible but perpetually unrealized. Not because they prefer suffering, because the unrealized potential feels, to the nervous system trained in this particular school, like the signature of something real, like the specific texture of love as they learned it. And the person who is consistently, unambiguously present does not produce this texture, this specific combination of hope and uncertainty, and the particular aliveness of waiting for something to finally become what it showed signs of being, and therefore does not initially feel like the real thing. This is the heart of the potential trap. It is not a failure of judgment in the simple sense. It is a fidelity to a learned experience of love that has become, without being recognized as such, the criterion by which the real thing is identified, and the criterion is wrong. Not because there is anything wrong with the person who has internalized it, but because it was formed in conditions that were themselves organized around emotional unavailability, and it selects for those same conditions in every new relational context it encounters, and the selection is experienced not as repetition of a wound, but as recognition of something genuine. Jung understood this as the projection of the anima or animus, the internalized image of the ideal other that every person carries in their psyche and tends to project onto the people they are most powerfully drawn to. But beyond the romantic projection, he understood it as a more general phenomenon. The tendency to see in the other not what is actually there, but what the psyche needs to find, shaped by the specific history of what the psyche learned to look for in the earliest environments where love and belonging were negotiated. The potential narrative is this projection-made narrative, made into a story that justifies the investment, even as the behavioral evidence accumulates that the investment is not being met with the development it was supposed to enable. Because here is what the potential narrative almost always fails to account for: the relationship between potential and the conditions under which potential develops. Most people who invest deeply in another person's potential believe, at some level, that their investment is itself one of those conditions, that their love, their patience, their belief, their willingness to see past the behavior to the person they know is really there, is what will create the conditions for the potential to finally be realized. That they are, in a meaningful sense, necessary to the other person's becoming, that without the specific quality of their faithfulness, the development would not occur. This belief is almost never accurate, and it is important to understand why it is inaccurate, because the inaccuracy is not simply a matter of naivety or wishful thinking. It is a reflection of a deeper misunderstanding about how genuine change in a person actually works. Change, in Jung's understanding, is an interior process. It is not produced from outside, however loving and however patient the outside presence that hopes to enable it. It is produced through the person's own encounter with their shadow, their own confrontation with what they have been avoiding, their own willingness to feel the genuine consequences of their patterns rather than being protected from those consequences by the continuous availability of someone who loves them enough to absorb those consequences in their place. The person whose potential you are investing in, whose better self you are faithful to through the pattern of behavior that does not match it, is not being helped toward their potential by your faithfulness. They are, in most cases, being enabled in the avoidance of the very confrontation that genuine development requires. Because your belief in their potential removes the most natural impetus for them to confront the gap between what they are capable of and what they are consistently doing. Your willingness to remain, to continue the investment despite the gap, communicates something to the other person's psyche that the potential narrative does not intend to communicate, but consistently does. It communicates that the gap has no serious consequences, that the inconsistency, the underperformance of their own best capacities, the failure to meet the relationship with the presence and the reliability, and the genuine effort that it deserves, can continue without the loss that would make it genuinely felt as a problem requiring genuine change. This is not a small thing, it is the central thing, because without consequences that are real and felt and significant enough to motivate the difficult internal work that genuine change requires, most people do not do the difficult internal work. Not because they are lazy or malicious or fundamentally incapable, but because the difficult internal work is genuinely difficult, genuinely threatening to the ego's constructed sense of self, genuinely requiring of a willingness to feel and face things that are easier to continue avoiding when the external environment continues to provide alternatives to facing them. Your love, extended faithfully in the name of potential, is often one of those alternatives. The alternative to facing what would need to be faced if the relationship that your faith is sustaining were no longer available to sustain. This is one of the harder truths about the investment in potential, that it often functions not as the gift it intends to be, but as an obstacle to the development it is hoping to enable. Not in every case, and not absolutely. There are relationships in which one person's sustained faith genuinely does contribute to another's development, in which the love and the patience and the specific quality of being believed in provides something that the person needed in order to make a movement they were otherwise unable to make. These relationships exist. They are not the fiction the potential narrative sometimes makes them out to be, but they have a feature that distinguishes them from the more common version of potential investment. They have movement. The development they are supposed to be enabling actually occurs. The behavior changes. The consistency improves. The gap between potential and pattern narrows in observable ways across time. The investment is met, not perfectly and not without difficulty, but genuinely met, with genuine effort from the person whose development the investment was intended to support. In the more common version of the potential narrative, this movement does not occur, or it occurs briefly in the aftermath of a crisis or a genuine emotional confrontation, and then gradually recedes back toward the previous pattern as the immediate pressure that produced the movement dissipates. The potential reasserts itself as glimpsed rather than realized. The behavior returns to what it has consistently been. And the person investing in the potential must decide, again, and often with less certainty than the last time, whether this reassertion is temporary or defining. The investment in potential requires this decision to be made repeatedly, and the characteristic of the pattern is that the decision keeps going the same way. Not because the person making it is incapable of judgment, but because the decision is not being made primarily on the basis of the behavioral evidence. It is being made on the basis of the potential, which is unchanged by the behavior's failure to realize it. The potential remains as compelling as it ever was. The glimpses are still genuine. The better self is still occasionally present. The narrative of what is possible, sustained by the emotional investment that has been accumulated, and the specific learned association between love and faithful waiting, continues to be more psychologically powerful than the pattern that the behavior has been establishing across time. This is what needs to be examined honestly, not the potential itself, which may be real, but the relationship between the potential and the pattern, between what the person is capable of and what they are consistently doing, between the glimpsed better self and the self that shows up in the ordinary conditions of daily life and daily relationship. Jung was precise about this distinction in a way that the potential narrative tends to resist. He understood that what a person does consistently in the ordinary conditions of their actual life is not a failure to express what they really are. It is, in the most meaningful sense, what they really are at this point in their development. The potential that the narrative points toward is real as potential, as something that exists in the psyche and that under the right conditions and with the right internal work might be more fully developed and expressed. But potential is not the person. Potential is what the person could become if they were willing to do the work that becoming requires. And that work is theirs to do. It cannot be done by someone who loves them. It cannot be enabled by someone who remains faithful to the potential while absorbing the consequences of the pattern. It cannot be produced by continued investment in a version of the person that the person has not yet chosen, through their own interior confrontation and their own sustained effort to actually become. The day you stop trusting potential is not the day you stop believing in human development. It is the day you understand the difference between genuine development and its perpetual deferral, between the movement that the investment is supposed to be supporting and the stasis that the investment is, in its current form, more likely enabling, between the person who is genuinely working toward becoming the better self that their potential suggests is possible, and the person who is relying on your faith in that possibility as a substitute for the internal work that would make it real. Making this distinction is difficult. It is difficult because the potential is real, and because the investment is genuine, and because the person for whom you have maintained such faithful patience is not simply the sum of their worst behaviors. They are a person with genuine interior depth, and genuine capacity, and genuine struggles with what they are and what they could be. Struggles that may look, from the inside of the potential narrative, like evidence that the development is in process rather than evidence that it has stalled. But there are markers that, if looked at with real honesty rather than through the filter of the investment, tend to distinguish genuine development from its performance. Genuine development moves. It is not uniform or linear or free from setbacks. But over the arc of a meaningful period of time, over the span of months or years that genuine internal change requires, there is observable movement in the direction of the better self, whose potential has been the basis of the investment. The inconsistencies that once characterized the pattern begin to be addressed, not perfectly and not without relapse, but genuinely and effortfully, and with evidence that the person is taking seriously the work that the gap between their potential and their pattern requires. In the absence of this movement, The investment in potential is sustaining a narrative rather than a development. It is maintaining the orientation toward what is possible rather than engaging honestly with what is actual. And this maintenance has costs that the potential narrative is not always honest about. The most significant cost is not the time spent waiting, or the energy invested, or even the specific hurts accumulated through the pattern that the potential narrative has been explaining and excusing. The most significant cost is the specific erosion that occurs in a person who consistently overrides their own perception in the service of the narrative. Who notices the pattern and explains it? Who feels the hurt and contextualizes it? Who observes the gap between the potential and the behavior and maintains faith that the gap is temporary? Each of these overrides, small in isolation, accumulates into a general diminishment of the trust between the person and their own perception. A general learning that what you directly observe and feel in a relationship is less reliable than the interpretation that the narrative provides. A general orientation toward managing your own responses, your own honest reading of the situation, in favor of the framework that the investment requires. And this orientation, sustained over significant time, makes it progressively more difficult to trust what you are actually seeing and feeling in any relationship. The very faculties that exist to protect you, that register misalignment and inconsistency, and the specific quality of being treated as less than the relationship deserves, become suspect. Become the thing that needs to be managed, rather than the thing that provides reliable guidance. This is the deepest cost of sustained investment in potential, not what is lost in the relationship that the investment sustains, but what is lost in the relationship you have with your own interior, with your own honest perception, with the part of you that knew, often much earlier than the conscious mind was willing to acknowledge, that the pattern was the pattern and the potential was the narrative, and the two were not equivalent. Jung believed that the path toward genuine psychological health ran directly through the honest acknowledgement of what is actually present, rather than through the maintenance of what is preferred. That the willingness to see clearly, to allow the perception to be what it is, rather than managing it into something more comfortable for the investment, was not a betrayal of the relationship or of the person in it. It was the necessary precondition for any genuine engagement with reality, including the reality of the other person who deserves to be seen as they actually are, rather than as the version the narrative has constructed. Because the potential narrative, for all its warmth and all its genuine faith, is in a certain sense a failure to see the other person. A failure to be in real relationship with the actual human being, rather than with the image of who they might become. And genuine relationship, the kind that is worth what relationship costs, and that produces the specific quality of being known and of knowing another person, that is the deepest thing human connection can offer. Genuine relationship requires the willingness to be present with what is actually there, with the person as they are, not as they could be, not as they were in their best moments, not as the potential suggests they might eventually become, as they are. And if who they are, consistently and across the range of ordinary circumstances, is not someone who is meeting the relationship with the genuine effort and the genuine presence and the genuine care that the relationship deserves, then the investment in who they could be is not love in the full sense. It is a beautiful intention organized around an avoidance of the grief of seeing clearly, of surrendering the image that the investment has been sustaining, of accepting that the potential was real as potential, and that potential, without the sustained internal work of the person whose potential it is, cannot become what the narrative was built around, believing it would become. That grief is real. It is not the simple grief of a thing that failed. It is the more complex grief of a thing that was never quite what it appeared to be. of an image that was genuinely compelling and genuinely felt and genuinely organized, a significant investment of time and care and hope, revealing itself to have been more interior than exterior, more about what you carried and what you learned to look for, and what your particular wound recognized as the signature of something worth waiting for, than about the actual person who provided the surface on which the image was projected. And this grief, if it is honestly felt, rather than immediately redirected into the next version of the investment, produces something, not immediately, not without the specific discomfort of sitting with what the honest seeing reveals. But eventually, if the seeing is maintained and the grief is moved through rather than around, it produces a different quality of perception, a perception that is less organized around the potential narrative and more genuinely available to what is actually present, a perception that can encounter an actual person with their actual qualities and their actual limitations and their actual consistency or inconsistency, and assess that person on the basis of what is actually there, rather than on the basis of what the wound was trained to construct from the materials of what is occasionally glimpsed. This different quality of perception changes what you are drawn to, not all at once, not through a simple decision to no longer be organized around potential, but gradually, through the accumulation of experience with your own honest seeing. The relational pattern shifts. The people whose potential exceeds their behavior begin to feel less compelling. The quality of being consistently met, of having the other person's behavior match their expressed care across the ordinary conditions of daily life, begins to register not as flatness or as the absence of the depth that the potential narrative promised, but as a form of respect, as evidence of something more genuinely valuable than the glimpsed potential of someone whose best self remains perpetually just out of reach. This shift is not the loss of the capacity for deep investment. It is the redirection of that capacity toward something it can actually reach, toward people who are genuinely working toward their own potential rather than relying on someone else's faith in it as a substitute for their own effort, toward relationships that are genuinely mutual rather than organized around one person's sustained faith and another person's sustained deferral of the development that faith is waiting for. Jung spent his life pointing toward the essential relationship between honest perception and genuine development. He understood that you cannot build anything real on a foundation you are not willing to examine honestly, cannot build a genuine relationship on an image rather than a person, cannot invest meaningfully in a potential that the person whose potential it is has not yet genuinely chosen to develop through their own sustained and effortful interior work. The day you stop trusting potential above behavior is the day you begin trusting something more valuable, your own perception, the accumulated evidence of your own direct experience, the reliable signal of what is consistently present rather than occasionally glimpsed, the real person rather than the imagined one. And the real person, when you have developed the capacity to encounter them clearly, will sometimes turn out to be genuinely extraordinary. Not because their potential is the most visible thing about them, not because you have had to reach past their pattern to sustain faith in their possibilities, but because who they actually are, consistently and in the ordinary conditions of daily life, is someone worth the full investment of genuine relationship. That is what you have been waiting for, not the person whose potential you have to believe in on their behalf, the person who is already doing the work of becoming themselves, who needs not your faith in their possibilities, but your genuine presence with who they actually are. That person exists. They have always existed. They simply could not be fully seen while the potential narrative was organizing what the eyes were looking for. Stop trusting potential. Start trusting presence. Start trusting pattern. Start trusting the reliable evidence of who a person consistently is in the ordinary conditions of being alive together. That trust will take you somewhere the potential narrative never managed to reach, somewhere real. Somewhere that was worth the entire long and costly education of having trusted the wrong thing for long enough to finally understand the difference. Comment below. What did you finally see when you stopped looking at who someone could be and started seeing who they actually were?